Thank you everyone for joining us today. This is to introduce Kavya, who is a research scholar at Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, IIT Bombay, and the member of our team, Let's Talk Tattva. Yeah, over to you, Kavya.
Thank you, Mahānubhāvs. Greetings, everyone, from Team Let's Talk Tattva, and I extend a very cordial welcome to everyone present here.
Can you please be a little louder?
Yeah, sure.
No, it's good now.
For those who are joining us for the first time, Let's Talk Tattva is a philosophy discussion forum that has been trying to take philosophy beyond conventional spaces like academia towards simply the mode or act of philosophy itself. To come to our present today's discussion, I'm going to be handling some of the important topics. Today's session or seminar will primarily focus on the Mahanubhava tradition. What is the Mahanubhava tradition and how did they
Kavya, it's not audible properly, maybe.
okay. I'm sorry, I have a little problem with my throat right now. I hope I'm audible now.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, thank you. So, what is the Mahanubhava tradition? How did they think about reality, and how are they related to the post 13th century religious, cultural, and political life world of medieval Western India? These are precisely the questions that Professor Antonio and Hemant will be discussing today. The significance of this tradition can hardly be emphasized. We may only indicate it through Dattatreya Upanishad, as Professor Antonio himself has quoted and translated it in his book, The Mahanubhavas, uh, which is quote, Dattatreya, I'm sorry for my pronunciation, but I'll try my best. Dattatreya Hare Krishna, Unmattananda Dayaka, Digambara Mune Bala Pishacha, Jnana Sagara. O Dattatreya, who are Hari and Krishna, the crazy bliss bestower, O you who are clad in space, the silent one, the child, the demon, the ocean of knowledge. Dattatreya Upanishad, chapter 1, verse 7. To introduce the speakers today, Professor Antonio is a professor of Sanskrit in Department of Asian and North African Studies at the Foscari University of Venice.
Ca Foscari, yeah.
Ca Foscari University of Venice. His main fields of research are the ascetic and devotional traditions of medieval and modern Maharashtra, Hindu hagiographies and termite mound mythologies, and the Sai Baba movement. Among his publications are the Hagiographer and the Avatar, the life and works of Narayan Kasturi, oral testimonies on Sai Baba, the Mahānubhāvs and Guru. Um some are in Italian, I think.
Yeah,
I would,
yeah,
yeah.
that's right.
Dattatreya, the Immortal Guru, Yogin and Avatar, the life and teachings of Sai Baba Shirdi, and the construction of a cultic center through narrative, the founding myth of the village of Puttaparthi and Satya Sai Baba, history of religion. This is a journal article. He has authored the entries Dattatreya Maharashtra, Shirdi Sai Baba, Trimūrti and Vibhūti in Brill's Encyclopedia of Hinduism. He's the editor in chief of the journal Annali di Ca Foscari, Siri Oriental. Before we begin, we would like to extend our thanks to Professor Mrinal Kaul for helping us connect with Professor Rigopoulos. Over to you, Professor.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for the introduction. And I'm very happy to be with you. And please extend my thanks to Professor Mirinal Kaul for asking me to participate in this. So basically, what I would like to do today is to tell you how I got involved in this study on Dattatreya or Datta, and to highlight some issues which I think are important for developing our knowledge both of the Dattatreya icon and deity, as well as the Mahānubhāv tradition. So, my first encounter with Dattatreya was via Sai Baba of Shirdi, because my BA thesis was, in fact, on the teachings and life of Shirdi Sai Baba, because I focused on this famous popular saint for my BA thesis. And so my first encounter with Datta was through him, because, as you probably know, most bhaktas of Datta, most bhaktas of Shirdi Sai Baba consider Sai Baba himself as an avatara or a manifestation of Dattatreya. So I was intrigued by this figure, and I started trying to learn more about him, because I was fascinated by his capacity of integrating Vaishnavism, Krishnaism, and Shaivism, Brahmanism and Islam, yoga and bhakti, etc. Because, in fact, Dattatreya appeared and appears to me as a kind of protean god, where the assimilative and integrative capacity of Maharashtrian culture, really, and of Hindu culture, is in a way at its peak. Dattatreya is really a paradigm of this integrative way of looking at assimilating the different strands of both philosophy and culture across religions, in a way, throughout India and throughout the Deccan in particular. So the reason with my interest in Datta is that he appeared to me as a paradigm of synthesis, a paradigm of integration. And I was puzzled by this capacity, and thus I selected Dattatreya as the topic of my PhD study when I went to the University of California in Santa Barbara. I worked on a monograph on Dattatreya as my project, my PhD project. And indeed, especially this happened between the late 80s and the early 90s. And finally, I took my degree with a thesis on Dattatreya in 1994, and I published a revised version of my doctoral thesis in 1998 with the SUNY Press, which is a monograph on Dattatreya. Basically, it is an introduction to Dattatreya, each chapter being, in a way, a historical unfolding or introduction to his figure, from the earliest times up to modernity, practically. So that was a kind of, if you wish, kind of initial interest and phase of my studies. I think it is still a fine introduction, although, of course, many new things have come up, and our knowledge of Dattatreya is much more deep and profound nowadays. So really, I look at that book, which I published back in 1998, as a sort of starting point or introduction to the deity, particularly in his three functions: as Supreme Guru, as Immortal Yogi, and as Eternal Avatara, as he's represented in not only in the Datta Sampradaya of the 16th century, but even earlier. Indeed, Dattatreya is such a plural and integrative figure that one even puzzles if we can speak of Dattatreya in the singular. Perhaps it should be more proper to speak of Dattatreyas in the plural, precisely because his functions and characteristics are so wide and diverse that one wonders if we can still talk about one and only one figure, or if we are actually faced with plural Dattatreyas, as it were. But I will leave aside this issue, but just to underline the plurality of influences, and he being the catalyst of so many different streams of Indian religions and philosophies, that it comes natural to think of him as inherently plural in a way. Now, Dattatreya is for sure a Puranic deity. I mean, his emergence is found especially in the Puranas, in the Sanskrit Puranas. I'm thinking particularly of Bhagavata Purana and Markandeya Purana. Those are the two basic sources for Dattatreya in the Puranas. But as you know, we find Dattatreya already present in the Mahabharata epic, in the famous episode of his giving boons to Arjuna Kartavirya. And most importantly, we find Dattatreya's mention in in Natha Yoga texts. Now, this link of Dattatreya with Nathism or Natha Yoga, especially with the so-called Western branch of Nath Yogis in the Marathi cultural area, is really fundamental, I think, because many scholars have noted that Nathism and the Western Naths in particular are at the fountainhead, at the source of both the Varkari movement and the Mahānubhāva movement. As you know, the brother of Gyandev was Nivrittinath, and he was a famous exponent of Nath Yoga in Maharashtra. And many scholars also believe that Changdev Raul and Gundam Raul, that are at the origin of the Mahānubhāvas, were originally Nath Yogis themselves. Various scholars, both Indian scholars and Western scholars, have highlighted this issue, so that, to be sure, to understand and to probe into the connection of Dattatreya with these Natha Yogis is still one, I think, of the most significant and crucial issues to explore. Recently, I was asked by Oxford University Press to publish, to write bibliographical essay on Dattatreya for Oxford Bibliographies. And this came out in 2024, last year. And at the end of this meeting, I can share this with you, because basically what I did, I tried to collect the most significant bibliography which concerns Dattatreya and also the Mahānubhāvs and Dattatreya, with reference to recent and also previous past scholarship. Now, with reference to the connection of Dattatreya and the Mahānubhāvs with the Nath Yogis and the Western Naths in particular, there are two texts that I can highlight to you. One is by a Marathi scholar whose name is Lonkar, whom you may probably know. He wrote in 1995 a monograph on the connections precisely between Datta and the Nath Yogis, also the sons, but especially the Nath Yogis. And then we have a very important work by a French Indologist, Véronique Bouillet. She wrote in 2017 monograph, a book called Monastic Wanderers in English, which is all about the not yogis, but especially modern and contemporary not yogis, but also with very interesting historical insights on the origins of Natism and of not yogis themselves. So these two works by Lonka of 1995 and Véronique Bouillet of 2017, I think are very useful to probe into this issue. But of course, much more needs to be done with regard to the connection of the early Dattatreya and the early Mahānubhāvs and Varkaris with this pan-Indian yogic movement, especially its Western branch. Concerning Sanskrit, of course, there is a strong connection of Dattatreya with yoga and renunciation, sannyas. I'm thinking particularly at the mention of Dattatreya along with other mythical figures that you find in the so-called Yoga and Sannyasa Upanishads. That's also an avenue of great interest, because Dattatreya is always typically extolled as the supreme Paramahamsa or the supreme Avaduta. And you find reference to him in the early so-called Sannyasa Upanishads. So that's also, on the Sanskrit side, an important issue to explore, along with the 13th century Dattatreya Yoga Shastra, which has been recently edited and studied by Mallinson, who is a scholar in yoga studies, and recently has been dedicating himself to an edition and translation of this Dattatreya Yoga Shastra, which dates around the 13th century, which is exactly the time of the beginning of the Varkaris and of the Mahānubhāvs. So it's a very crucial time. And it is a text that combines classical Ashtanga yoga of Patanjali with mantra yoga, hatha yoga, and more tantric yoga. So it's an interesting blending. And this is another very important text, of course, which one needs to look into. So there are these traces of Dattatreya in Sanskrit literature, as I mentioned, but also in Natism as we know it, that has been around for centuries, because you probably know that Dattatreya is revered as the Adi Guru within the Western Nat Yoga branch in India, along with Gorakhnath and Matsyendranath. He is considered in a way to take the place of Shiva as the Adi Guru, the Adi teacher of Natism and of yoga in general. So I think this is a very important issue, because to explore more in depth the connection of Dattatreya with the yoga of the Nats is to probe into the origins, the veritable origins of both the Varkaris, of Gyandev via Nivrittinath, and also of the Mahānubhāvs, because, as I already said, many scholars believe Gundam Raul and Shankdev Raul, who were originally Shaivas, to have been Nata yogis. Then, of course, there is the fundamental issue of the relation of Dattatreya in the literature of the Mahānubhāvs, because after all, Dattatreya emerges precisely in the literature of the Mahānubhāvs around the 13th century. That's the starting point, really, of his popularity, at least in the among the Mahānubhāvs. And here the scholars are the ones you probably know. That is Dere in Marathi, and of course Ian Rayside and Anna Feldhaus in the West. They have written a lot on the Mahānubhāvs and their origins, and you can find that in my bibliography to the book that was mentioned, the Mahānubhāvs, that I published some time ago, many years ago. In fact, that book was not conceived as a book originally. It was an article. It was an article on a tradition that was not conforming to Hindu mainstream tradition. So it was part of a seminar that was held in Europe, and I was asked to contribute, and I chose the Mahānubhāvs as an example of a dissident tradition, of a let's say of a non-mainstream Hindu tradition, which would be interesting to explore. So that book originated simply as an article, because I'm not a Mahānubhāva scholar, I'm not a Marathi scholar. But then some good people insisted that I should make it into a small book, which I finally did. But please consider the Mahānubhāvs as only a basic introduction to the Mahānubhāvs, because the true scholars in the field are, of course, in the West, Anne Feldhaus and Novetske, also a great scholar on these issues, along the trail, the great figure of Ian Rayside and others who taught in London. And of course, in India, there are some seminal figures like I mentioned R.C. Dere and others who have been leading scholars on the Mahānubhāvs in the second half of the 20th century, and also now at the beginning of the 21st century. So, well, my contribution was limited to that introduction to the Mahānubhāvs, where I point out that there are some important textual references, textual loci, that concern Dattātreya and that have been studied. In particular, Sutrapat 10 to 282, 285, which is an important mention of Dattātreya in the Sutrapat, in which it is said that Dattātreya manifests himself in each of the four yugas, in each of the four ages, and that he is the Adikarana, the first cause of the Mahānubhāvs. Now, this is very important, and this is taken up in other works, in other texts of the Mahānubhāvs that have been studied, like, for instance, the Gadyaraja, like, for instance, the Sayadri Varnan, and the Sayadra Leela, which is an appendix to the Sayadri Varnan. And you find all references in my introduction. What I want to highlight is that the main loci of Dattatreya in the literature of the Mahānubhāvs have been considered, starting with a famous article by Rayside of, I think, 1982, which was indeed titled Dattatreya. But you find all this in the bibliography of the book, and also in the Oxford bibliographies I'll be sending to Himanshu today after this talk, so that you can have a reference tool to what I'm saying now. But of course, much more is to be done on this, because as you know, Dattatreya is considered as one of the Pancha Krishnas, one of the five avatars of Parameshvara in Mahānubhāva theology, and as the Adi Guru and the originator, first cause, as I said, of the Mahānubhāvs. So Krishna and Dattatreya, or Dattatreya and Krishna, stand out among the Panchakrishnas as the two divine figures. And then you have the three human figures, of course, Changdev Raul, Gundam Raul, and Chakradhar, who are the other three historical avatars of Parameshvara. But as I was saying, more is to be done on Dattatreya's figure within the Mahānubhāv Marathi literature. There are texts, hagiographies on Dattatreya, which are very important among the Mahānubhāvs. I'll just mention two. The Sri Dattātreya Charitra of Maimbat, which is probably around late 13th century. Sri Dattātreya Charitra. It's a story of the life of Dattatreya compiled by a Mahānubhāv whose name was Maimbat. And in the 14th century, we have also another important text, the Dattatreya Prabandha of Bhishmacharya. This is another significant text in Old Marathi, 14th century. And there are others, of course, because the literature is vast. But I would mention these two as texts that would deserve to be edited and even eventually translated, because they are important additions to what we already know from the Sutrapat, from the Gadyaraja, from the Sayadri Varnan and the Sayadra Lila. So I think that on the issue of Dattatreya and the Mahānubhāvs, these textual references are important, and there is, of course, a lot to be done in order to reconstruct the figure of Dattatreya in early 13th and 14th centuries. In passing, there is also this famous issue of the absence of an avatar of Parameshvara since the death of Chakradhar. And as you know, the Mahānubhāvs, according to their theology, they say that it is impossible to attain moksha as long as you don't have the possibility of meeting an actual avatar of Parameshvara. And given the fact that the last fifth avatar of Parameshvara left the body in the 13th century, so they are left in this quandary, which is also kind of tragic. How can one among the Mahānubhāvs, both lay and monks, attain moksha in the absence of an avatar of Parameshvara? They call this asannidana, the absence. One possibility of avoiding this situation, perhaps, would be precisely to consider the theology of Dattatreya. Dattatreya, in fact, is considered to be an eternal avatar and to be always present on earth. Albeit, it is very difficult to recognize him because he often appears unexpectedly, all of a sudden, and in ways that typically you would not expect. For instance, as a fakir, for instance, as a warrior, for instance, as an animal, so that it is usually very difficult to have darshan of Dattatreya, you knowing that animal or that figure is in fact a manifestation, an avatar of Datta. So perhaps a way out of this conundrum, of this impasse situation, would be to take very seriously the issue of Dattatreya being not only the Adi Karana of the Mahānubhāvs, but also the eternal avatar who is always present on earth, although in incognito, and although, as they say in Maharashtra, it is very difficult to realize his presence, yet it is possible. And the idea is that he's always present, indeed, so that perhaps this issue of the absence, asannidhan, could be solved via this theological understanding of Dattātreya as the eternal avatara, the immortal yogi, and the supreme guru. So concerning the Mahānubhāvs, I think there is a lot to be done, especially by Indian Marathi scholars, because there are lots of texts that need to be looked at, edited properly, and translated. I just mentioned these two, the Shri Dattatreya Charitra of Mahimbat and the Dattatreya Prabandha of Bhishmacharya, but there are many more, of course. So this is, I would say, an important task that Indian Marathi scholars could look into. Then a third point I would like to mention is that Dattatreya, as you know, becomes popular only around the 16th century, because we must never forget that the Mahānubhāvs were a small group, a very elitist group, and also a persecuted group by mainstream Hinduism. In fact, the Mahānubhāvs had to hide themselves very soon. Starting in the 14th century, they had to go in a way in obscurity to hide themselves because they were subject to persecution. They had even to invent a secret script to continue, their existence without being noticed, so that their situation, both at a lay and at a monastic level, was very, very difficult. And typically in Maharashtra, Mahānubhāvs were despised, and they surfaced also to research, to scholarly research, only, I would say, around the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century. So this is a very important chapter that concerns Marathi literature, but also please notice that the Mahānubhāvs were a very small group. Their destiny was opposite to that of the Varkaris. That is the mainstream popular bhakti of Maharashtra, centered in Pandharpur, of course. Whereas the Mahānubhāvs were really always very small in numbers. They continue to exist, but with very, very, very small numbers. And I remember an article by Anne Feldhaus in The Experience of Hinduism back in the late 80s, 1980s, where she did an article on contemporary Mahānubhāvs. That's an interesting, also very interesting topic to explore and actually meet the contemporary presence of Mahānubhāv tradition in Western India. So you could also consider this article, which was written in the late 80s, I believe, 87, 88. But as I was saying, another fundamental moment is the beginning, the inception of the Datta Sampradaya, per se, which is another story, which begins around the mid-16th century. And the foundational text, as you know, is the Guru Charitra, which is dated around 1550. And the Guru Charitra of Saraswati Gangadhar is really the Bible for all Datta devotees of the present. From the 16th century onwards, the Guru Charitra has been the text for all the devotees of the Datta Sampradaya in Maharashtra. very, very fundamental, foundational text, which is also a response to Islam in a way, and in which you see, in a way, another facet of Dattatreya, not so much the ascetic element, but more the shastric ritual element, the Brahmanical shastric ritual element, along with the bhakti element, the devotional element. Because here Dattatreya is, in the first place, the supreme guru, the supreme divine guru, and devotion to him through the practice of smarta ritual, of Brahmanical orthodox rituals, is the way to attain him and to attain moksha, liberation. So this is another fundamental issue. Here I can mention two scholars that have recently worked on the Datta Sampradaya and the Guru Charitra in particular. One is Mugdha Yeolekar. I hope I pronounced her name correctly. Mugdha Yeolekar. She did her PhD with Anne Feldhaus, and she devoted her work to the Guru Charitra, and she published two texts, one in 2014 and another one in 2022, which are very important for understanding also the Guru Charitra in the present, how the Guru Charitra is worshipped in a way, is used, and what is its function in contemporary Datta Sampradaya. And the other scholar is Jeremy Morse. I think he's from the United States. He wrote two important articles, again, on the Guru Charitra, one in 2017 and another one in 2019, always concerning this interplay of bhakti, of devotion, and shastric ritual, which is the characteristic of the Guru Charitra. And again, you will find all this information, all this bibliography in the article I will be sending to you after this meeting. So don't worry about all these references, because I will send you a written article about all these bibliographical issues. So don't worry about it. Even here, I think much is to be done, starting with the edition and the translation of the Guru Charitra. The Guru Charitra, there is a standard edition in Marathi, of course, also with some Sanskrit interpolations, like the Guru Gita, for instance, that was inserted within the Marathi Guru Charitra, that is devotional hymns to the Guru, stotras, Sanskrit stotras, and other brief passages. But basically, the Guru Charitra, of course, is in Marathi. As I was saying, it was written by Saraswati Gangadhara in around 1550. And a translation, at least an English translation, and an edition of the Guru Charitra, to my knowledge, is still needed, and has not been done so far. So that could be a very useful thing to do, even for scholars who do not know Marathi, for instance. And there are abridged versions and summaries of the Guru Charitra in Hindi, in English, in other languages, but there is not a full translation. And of course, the Guru Charitra is very important because it details the lives of the two first historical avatars of Dattatreya. They are Shripada Shrivallabha and Narasimha Sarasvati. And Shripada Shrivallabha and Narasimha Sarasvati both originated from the Marathi cultural area, although from the fringes, so to speak, of it, because if I remember correctly, Shripada Sri Vallabha was from Andhra originally, and even Narasimhan Sarasvati, who was venerated especially at the pilgrimage place of Narsobhavadi, is at the very fringes of the borders of Maharashtra and Karnataka and Andhra. So it's a very interesting also thing to do, to explore all these sthanas, all these pilgrimage places that are connected with both Shripada Sri Vallabha and Narasimha Sarasvati, and also the parampara that follows, that is all the various teachers that are venerated as avatars of Datta in the Datta Sampradaya along the centuries after these two seminal figures. For instance, Akkalkot Maharaj is widely venerated in contemporary Maharashtra as the third historical avatar of Datta in this line, Akkalkot Maharaj. And of course, even Shirdi Sai Baba and other fakirs are considered to be avatars of Datta by many Hindu bhaktas. So those are interesting avenues to explore. And also, from an iconographic point of view, I didn't mention this, but I should. It is very interesting to explore the issue, the passage from the Ekmukhi Datta to a Trimukhi Datta, because as you know, from the 16th century, really emerges the iconography of Dattātreya with three heads representing Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, the Trimūrti itself, with the Vishnu head being central, so that Trimukhi Datta is considered to be the most popular figure. But the oldest representations of Dattatreya, of course, are with one head, Ekmukhi Datta, although often with four hands, but with one head. And there is a very good monograph of a Marathi scholar whose name is Kunden, 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 who wrote a monograph on Ekmukhi Datta in 1997. This is also something that perhaps it would be interesting to explore, because he makes a thorough research of all Ekmukhi Datta temples in the whole of Maharashtra, but also outside of Maharashtra, even I think in the north in Nepal. And so it's a very interesting issue to explore, this this representation of Datta, Ekmukhi and later Trimukhi Datta. Finally, I would like to point out the issue of the Sanskrit texts that are focused on Dattatreya, because that is what I have been most interested in, studying Sanskrit. So besides the Dattatreya Yoga Shastra that I mentioned, that Mallinson is editing and studying, there are some fundamental Sanskrit texts that are very much revered in the Datta Sampradaya, along with the Guru Charitra, and I'll just mention them. They are, of course, the Avadhuta Gita. The Avadhuta Gita is an important text, probably of Nata inspiration, of Nat Yoga inspiration, which is quite late, of Vedanta, non-dual Vedanta orientation. That goes under the name of Dattatreya, in the sense that the Avadhuta Gita is considered to be, in a way, the teaching that Dattatreya gives concerning yoga and non-dualism, or non-dual Vedanta. And this is quite popular, especially in central and southern India, along with another short text, which is the Jivanmukta Gita, which is in a way along the lines of Natism, although this is also a late text, where what emerges is the ascetic nature of Datta, his nature as an avadut, as a supreme yogi, so that both the Avaduta Gita, which is in 8 chapters, and the short Jivan Mukta Gita are in a way expression of the ascetic nature of Datta. And then, of course, you have the Tripura, the Jnana Kanda, the Jnana or Jnana Kanda of the Tripura Rahasya, which is a Shakta text that is very important in southern India, focused on goddess Tripura. And this section on knowledge, the Jnana Kanda, is important because it has to do with Datta, with Dattatreya, and it's a very beautiful portion of this text, which is, of course, a Shakta tantric text. And there are various translations also of all these texts that I mentioned have been translated even in English. There is also a very, very good translation in Italian of this Jnana Kanda of the Tripura Rahasya, which I think is better than the French or English that we have. It was done by a friend of mine who's a colleague in Turin. His name is Alberto Pelissero, who has done a very good Italian translation of this section of the Tripura Rahasya. And on my side, I translated the Dattalaharī or Dattalaharī, which is a small composition, a kavya composition of about 100 verses in the Shikarini meter. I translated this short text, but engaging text, because the Sanskrit is quite difficult, some years ago. Not so much because it is old, because certainly the Dattalaharī is possibly 18th century, so it's not at all old. But Daladana or Daladana Muni is considered to be one of the oldest devotees or followers of Dattatreya. So the author or the supposed author, Daladana Muni, of this Dattalaharī is revered in the Datta Sampradaya tradition, at least, as one of the oldest followers or bhaktas of Datta. So that was something that intrigued me, and also the very beautiful Sanskrit of this Lahari, so that I ended up translating this short poem in Italian some years ago. So I did an Italian translation with the introduction and notes to this Dattalaharī of Daladana Muni. But basically, the most important Sanskrit texts, along with the Dattatreya Yoga Shastra, are, as I said, the Avaduta Gita, the Jivan Mukta Gita, and the Jnana Kanda of the Tripura Rahasya. I would say that these, together with all the mentions that you find, for instance, in Yoga and Sannyasa Upanishads, besides, of course, the Puranas that are the fundamental points of reference in Sanskrit sources concerning Dattatreya, are the main resources, the main textual sources to look at. But as I said, I can give you in this Oxford Bibliographies paper, which I prepared last year. I will be sending it to you, and you will find all the references that are needed in this paper. Finally, what I'd like to say is that I think Dattatreya is really a key to understanding much of Maharashtrian spirituality and religion, because to be sure, he is in a way intersecting so many different strands of Indian religion: bhakti, yoga, Brahmanical, Smarta Hinduism, Tantrism, even Islam, Sufism, that makes, again, his figure really very attractive, at least to my eyes, and appealing. Also because of its integrative capacities, as I was saying at the very beginning, this assimilative, integrative character and nature of Datta from its very inception, from its very origin, because after all, even in the Markandeya Purana, Dattatreya is revered as an avatar of Vishnu, but at the same time, he exhibits very antinomian characteristics, like drinking wine or having sex, so that he's very much linked to Shakta and tantric situations and elements from the very inception, so that he's really a fascinating figure because it combines many different strands of so-called Hinduism. And just to finish on this note, even in the Mahānubhāvs, to come back to the Mahānubhāvs, the most important center for Dattatreya worship in the Mahānubhāv literature is Mahur or Matapur. Now, Mahur or Matapur is a very important place for Shaktism, Shakta, and even tribal Hinduism. And it is no chance that Mahur is also very important to Dattatreya, because there is a very old temple to Dattatreya there. And also that that area is a Mahānubhāva area, because the surrounding area is, in a way, the heartland of Mahānubhāva. So again, you see this kind of elusive protean figure of Datta that intersects Brahmanism, even in its more chauvinistic elements, like, for instance, in the contemporary days, where, for instance, at Datta temples, the entrance to untouchables or Dalits was prohibited. So you have both extremes. In a way, Datta is the catalyst at the same time of Brahmanical pride and, in a way, let's say, kind of an approach that is opposite or against low castes or Islam, while at the same time, as I was mentioning, many Muslim fakirs, Sufis, have been appropriated by Hindu devotionalism precisely through the medium of Dattatreya, because these figures have been recognized as avatars of Dattatreya. And this is precisely what has happened even in the case of the Sai Baba of Shirdi. So that, for instance, the Bible for all Sai Baba of Shirdi devotees is the Shirdi Sai Satcharita of Himad Pant. Now, the Shirdi Sai Satcharita, which tells the story of the life of Shirdi Sai Baba, is revered by Bhaktas as the modern Guru Charitra, as the modern version of Shripada Sri Vallabha's 16th century Guru Charitra, precisely because Shirdi Sai is revered by them as an avatar of Datta. So you see, you have, in a way, you close the circle, because you have approaches to Datta which span from the most conservative, orthodox Brahmanical ideology to the more liberal, open, and in a way prone to integration on the other side. So really, this makes Dattatreya truly fascinating across the centuries and even today. I think I should stop here, perhaps.
Thanks very much, Professor Antonio. I think now we can have a little discussion, and then we can move to Professor, I think, later we can have this talk with Hemant. Right. So questions, comments, yeah. Perhaps we can collect questions and then you can respond collectively. That may be better.
Sure.
Yeah.
We can have Hemant presentation and then we can respond together.
Oh, that's also fine. That's also fine.
That is fine, absolutely.